Look at him. He's interested. Smiling at you.
You have a willing student there.
Well, yeah.
He looks self-directed.
All these months, you can just imagine what we do.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Yep. So
right.
are we
Well,
discussing reading, or are we sharing sharing work?
Sorry.
I don't know what we're doing.
Homework 5A that you did, maybe
Okay.
I didn't make that clear. Share that with each other and critique it for each other and help, refine it and get it better.
Okay.
I'm going to go to the other groups and remind them that's what we're doing.
Thanks.
So I'll see you a little later. I'll come back.
I don't know if it's my internet. Desmos wasn't allowing me to go back in. So this is where I might have to change this. Where I do remember saying slide 1, slide 2, like it's marked on there. So I might have to change it. But for each one, there's a warm up. What I did for all of them was just the process, or actually the mastering. But I think it's also the process, how they did warm up. I do not understand the warm up. I do. This is actually just one thing I picked from the form. It was my first time using the linear scale. I'll see how much I like it, because I don't think this is very precise of what students know what a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is. The only reason I want to make too much changes is because I know once I'm able to go back to Desmos, I can change this whole format. And again, activity 1, I think it was like 2, 3, I think it was problems 2 through 5, or slice problems 2 through 5, and so on. I kind of like them going back and figuring things out. And then I just took this. I can tell whether or not a figure is a scaled copy of another, because that actually came from the self-checkout the students did, and I gave examples. This one, they do have to do a short answer. So like I kind of, once I did this, because I couldn't go back to Desmos, I decided to leave it. But there's a couple things I do want to change, and I do want to create something after every lesson the students can go back. And after listening to Larry about, also put something in there, because I want this to be more of the process. Did I make corrections? But once again, Tara, I don't know how it works. Once the students do the lessons, we pull slides for them. Are they able to go back and make corrections on Desmos?
They are able to go back.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple things, Valentina. So first, I don't know if you saw Ellie's, I think I'm saying your name correctly. Ellie, yes, okay. Her mic isn't working. And so to your point of the 1 through 5, she was saying if you can add on there, like what the 1 through, like we know as grownups what the 1 through 5 means, but I think for the kids, they probably need more clarification on that, on the form.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm going to change. This was just a choice you pick on linear setting. Once I picked it, it just gave you between. But actually, I'm going to go back and just do a 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to just type out, like, you're going to have to pick the multiple choice one. So I'm just going to go back and say what a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 5 is.
So I can also, when I share mine with you, I had headings. Like I did something where they had to rate them 1 through 5 as well, but I had a heading at the top that said what 1 through 5 was, and then you could still just do 1 through 5 for each one.
Okay, so if you want, I can stop sharing mine if you want to share yours. Just because I wasn't sure how the students, what it looked like on Desmos. So Tara, once they go through the problem, they can actually go back and make corrections, you said? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a live, as far as I understand, those Desmos lessons are a live document all the time for them. Like, I don't think that it closes. Okay. In my experience with doing it with kids, I mean, I've never had a kid tell me that they couldn't change it.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. So that I'm going to change that. So I will put that on here because I want it to be more of a process so they can understand, are they going through it? Because they're going to be doing a lot of this in class. I mean, actually every day it's going to be a lesson.
Let me suggest that you keep the two things separate, that you're evaluating here their level of understanding. So they finish doing some process and they come, and as they're doing it, they're bouncing back and forth to this and saying, I get this, I don't get this. Is that how you imagine it being done? Okay.
No, I'm gonna have to change it. I want it as a process, like, because I think asking the students to do the warm up and then fill this out, then going back and forth, that's what I'm gonna do, the whole thing where I have to change my questions around. And now that I know that the students, one, they don't have access to how it's labeled and they can make corrections, I'm gonna change it. It's more gonna be a process, as far as that I completed, is it on time? Did I make corrections? Stuff like that.
And this is the kind of thing that you can all share with each other. Desmos is going to be the same for everybody, as I understand it. So if you can, I think what's going to happen is you're going to make a stab at how do we have them evaluate the process of using Desmos. And that's going to evolve over time as more people have more ideas about how to do that well. You start with, what do you value? What aspect of them sitting down at a computer and doing this stuff do you think is the most important thing that they're doing? So that when they're done, they can look back and say, yeah, I did that. No, I didn't do that. And they can learn from it. So instead of taking it piece by piece, step back and say, I'm looking at a kid doing something with Desmos. What is it I want for them to be aware of as they're doing it? What is it that I want them to be conscious of in the process? That's what I want them to measure for themselves. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to run to the other groups here because not everybody.
Wait, Valentina, will you put it back on there?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'm going to leave. See you later.
Oh, wait, and Ellie has something in.
So, so actually we do initial it when we go around and initial it, and they get a 5 if all the problems are attempted. And then they have to show the work to get a 5 too. All right. When then we go over it or we put the answers up, they're supposed to correct in another color. So that way they can go back and look at it, try to understand it, ask questions. They know which ones they didn't understand. And then they have to try to get help on it. So those are what I'm having them evaluate themselves on. And then if they did all of them, they'll get a 5. If they missed 1 or 2 of them, they get a 4. More than 2, they get a 3.5. They didn't do any, of course, they don't get any points. But I don't give lower than a 3.5 on homework. And then I just thought, well, maybe they have a reason why things are missing. So this is optional explanation of why items are missing.
You might want to say optional, because if they feel compelled to write it, they're going to fill in the form somehow. They'll phone it in. Why 3.5? Why not just 3?
Well, and I think now that I'm thinking of it, it could be a 3, but when I went around and looked at homework, they were working on something online, and I'd go around and I'd look at it, and I'd give them a grade every day in the book. And I never wanted to give lower than a C on homework. It wasn't an assessment. It was like, did they try? Homework is not something that you've yet mastered. It's practice. So I didn't want to give a lower grade than 3.5. But I can see why maybe it doesn't apply for this kind of evaluation. Yeah.
The issue of, that's a good point. Separating out, did you master this from, are you doing all the steps of learning it? Are you doing that well? Allows you to free yourself up from thinking about, is this a C for homework or is it a B+ or whatever? And just let them focus on, how did I do this? Am I doing all the steps? Am I aware of it? And you've done a great job of identifying what you care about. Getting help from somebody, if you don't understand something, is something you value. They're going to start to value it because they're paying attention to it because you wrote it out. So listing all these bits helps them understand what you care about. So I would just, yeah, I think keeping it as simple as possible, 3 instead of 3.5,
Okay.
It looks good to me though.
All right.
I'm going to jump to the last group because I haven't seen everybody yet. So I'll see you guys in a bit.
Hi, Larry. Can you let me back in?
Yes, what happened?
My mic wasn't working.
Ah, okay.
I was trying, like, Larry, look at the chat.
Oh, let me see. Where, do you remember what group you were in?
With Valentina.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, here you go.
Each part of the project. And if they, so it's a very clear yes or no. So that's where I am at. So
I got special ed, and it's this, the easier the better, especially because, I mean, since half the time they can't read and comprehend the instructions really well.
Right.
I think, basic yes or no helps. And then what I do is a lot of times if they don't get it, then I go and sit next to them and I talk to them about it. It's like, okay, you guys didn't put an answer here. What do you think about this one? Then a lot of times they can explain it.
and
So
some of my lower students, that's what I do. It's a one-on-one, one to do the project, and then two to, okay, what do you think? What can you tell me? What's going to happen here? And I'll pose questions just because I want to see what did they get? What does multiplication do? So, okay.
Dan, I'm sorry, could you put that back up? I missed the beginning of this. Could you pop that back up on the screen? And I want to see the top of it again, if you don't mind.
So,
yeah.
just a bunch of yes and no questions. Can they go through? Did they complete each part of what we asked them to do? And then questions 9 and 10 are the two key concepts. What does multiplication do? And what does addition subtraction do? Okay, when you're using the coordinate pair rules.
Okay. Project similarity. So you're going to say this to them, but you might want to have it in writing that the instructions of circling yes or no are, did you complete this?
Okay.
You know, they'll look at it and yes, what?
Okay.
So that's one thing. And this is basically, are you doing all the bits and pieces of the process?
Right.
Not how well are you doing it, just are you doing it?
Right, because there's been years where even with me spoon feeding, I'm not getting a return percentage that is there.
Right.
Because even we chunk it down, so much is based on their own time that they just don't, nothing gets done I won't say nothing, very little gets done at home.
Yeah, right.
And if we're working on other things during a support class.
Right.
So circle if completed. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And one more thing, if, are they going to have a piece of paper that they're actually literally circling?
They're going to be given this.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And can you scroll down? Let me just see the last bit.
And then what I liked about this project, what can be improved about this project, and then a self-grade, I just give ABC, and then teacher assessment ABC. Nothing below that.
Yeah. So two things. One is, are they going to be able to improve the project? I mean, realistically, with the kids you're talking about, are they going to be able to look at what you did and say, this would make it better?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Because
and then
I want them to understand the concepts. The grade to me is secondary.
Right.
Are they doing something and understanding what they're doing?
Right. And then I think you should define what an A and a B and a C are.
Okay.
In some capacity. Have a legend off to the side, or you know, explain to them if these are all yeses, that's an A. If you have 3 no's, that's a B, or whatever you decide. But give them a specific guidance, because they're going to guess, you know, it's a guess. I got an A, you know. And then if you have specifics, like how many of these did you complete, and they screw it up, they say it's an A, and you realize given what they did, it's actually a C, you can just circle the things and with an arrow, and you don't have to say anything. They'll see why it's not an A.
Okay.
And that's the mark of a good self-evaluation, is a teacher can correct it and give feedback to the kids about what they did or didn't do without doing a lot of writing. It's
Okay.
really quick for you. It's really direct for them. Yeah?
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, very clear.
All right. All right. Well, I'm going to hop back to another group then. How you guys doing? Any big questions or anything?
Well, we just finished.
Oh, you're done?
We're popping in. Yeah, because yeah, all three of us went, and then I went earlier.
Yeah, you did. Well, that's a shortcut. So you have a nice long break here. I'll see how close everybody else is, and then I'll get back to you if I'll send a chat to you if we're going to start earlier than 5 after, but probably you just have a nice break here.
Awesome.
How nice for you. Great. See you later.
In a little bit. So here's my whole thing, is that part of so I'm teaching 6th grade, and they'll do their, like, we're using Open Up, so they'll do their Open Up lesson, and then Open Up has like practice problems, which could be homework, but no homework, I'm just going to do it in class. So they do their problems, and this is a way to self-evaluate how do they do on these practice problems in class, and then that will drive their choice for open work time. And with this document, the last column that says open work time guidance, this is like a scaffolding piece. Eventually I want to get rid of that, so that this is like, as we start off, if you miss these problems, then you should start with this during open work time, and then they have choice after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how I feel, because I don't want to take away their choice, but I also thought, like, well, you have to learn how to make a good choice. If I got some problems wrong, how do I know what to do? So anyway, so here's my thing. So my directions are that this would be after they've finished the problems, that I have an answer key on the 2nd page of this document. So they would be checking their work, and they would just check, did I get problem number 1 right? What was my understanding? And then I put like a chunk for, now once we go into open work time after this, you should do this first, and then you can choose whatever. So, and then I thought, well, I can't just say, like, if I got them incorrectly, I should put, if you answered all problems correctly, and I didn't put anything there yet, but I'm still thinking about it.
Hmm.
So that's what I got. And this is like, the answer key is down here for those problems. So they would look at this, like, ideally side by side. Here's the answer key. Here's my evaluation form. That's going to help drive what I do during open work time. What do you guys think?
I like it.
I like it too. And then can you just share what you wrote? I can't see. Right. It says if you answered 1, 2, or 3 incorrectly, begin with the task.
Yeah.
If you answered all problems correctly.
I didn't put anything there yet.
Okay.
I was thinking
what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I was hesitant to put this column, this is open work time guidance, because I don't want to be in control of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I eventually want to get rid of this, because then they'll be able to see, maybe they'll be able to make good choices after that, what they need. Another thing I thought of, I could put under the problem, like this, I don't know, the skill it focuses on, but that might just be too much stuff on one page.
That's more for you than for them, I think.
Okay.
I got to tell you, the right-hand column seems really relevant to me, and it's really important scaffolding. I taught juniors and seniors, and I can tell you without hesitation that very few of them were really able to make good choices for themselves academically. So I wouldn't expect that your kids, think about kids walking into school. People are telling them what to do all day long. They're not making a lot of choices. They're not meaningful ones anyway. I think the more scaffolding you got, especially, maybe this will go away after a while when you see that they're really capable, but giving them some direction like this, it looks great to me. If I were a student and I got something wrong, I would like to be able to see, then I better go do that to follow up.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree too. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's very easy to follow too. Just the layout of it, Julia, is really good. And I would agree that you need that last column, because adults don't know how to make those choices sometimes. I would even go further and say that. Like in college, my husband says that all the time. He's a professor, and he says I have to teach them the first year how to even do this. So it's hard. So I would totally keep that there. Quick clarifying question, like for my clarification, when you have number 2 in the directions, you know, they're checking, I'm trying to envision this, they're checking the answers, so they're going to mark yes or no, they got it right, and then you said you can correct any mistakes. So will they do that first with a friend or in their study groups and then go to open work time? Is that clear, or is it just not clear to me?
That's a good question. That's what I wanted it to be. Like, and this could happen too at different points for different people, right? So we have our lesson together, we're breaking off into doing practice problems, and then I guess as you finish, you're checking the answer key and correcting any mistakes. But I wanted, it'd be great to have it be done in pairs or study groups, but I mean, if someone does it on their own too, because that's what they need, that's okay. But yes, so number 2 would be done. They would check their mistakes, and then when they're ready, they would go into open work time.
I also think if you wanted to like offer some sort of choice, I think that you could say like, if you answered 1, 2, or 3 incorrectly, begin with the task. And then after you watch the video or you answered all the problems correctly, then like give options of like additional practice, whether it's like IXL or Khan Academy problems, where it's like, then they're given that choice and additional like practice for the questions that they missed.
Right. So that's like, they'll have a learning contract that has all those mild, medium, and spicy tasks.
Sure.
I just wanted to provide like a starting point, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's what I'm still trying to decide, because like this is like informing their open work time.
Yeah.
And there's like the menu with all the tasks. So that's where I get kind of confused in my mind of like, okay, I should give you a starting point, but then do I say do one other thing? Like, I guess it's just, we'll have to kind of learn as we go in that aspect as to how much time it takes to do stuff. Because what if it takes a student the rest of class to do these practice problems, go through this? So then do I start with open work time the next day maybe for a little bit before the next lesson? Like, I think that's okay. That could be something we do.
Yeah.
Now what I'm hearing is it's linked to your contract. This is not just by itself, but the unit contract also plays a role. So I wonder if it's just something like, after this Khan Academy video, if you need more practice or need to work more on this, then see your contract page blah, something, and then they just go there and they know it's there, but you're reminding them to go there for more.
A couple of points. One is when they've done practice, they need feedback as to whether they've learned from the practice. So this tells them they don't understand something. They go to Khan Academy, they do some stuff. There needs to be something at the end of that where they can say, okay, now I get it. Or, ooh, you know, I need to do more practice. That will develop over time, but that's the kind of multiple feedback pieces you have to direct at them. The other thing is that some kids are going to get these all right, and you have to have stuff for them to do so that they're not going to be bored waiting for the other people. So if you answered all the problems correctly, that's a kind of a cumulative thing, because if you see the whole problem set, they maybe got 1 or 2 wrong, they got 5, 6, 7, and 8 all right. You might have instructions outside this box. If you got all of these correct, then go to these items on your contract. I assume the Khan Academy video, what is area, is on your contract.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is telling them the first step.
Yeah.
And you might want to see if you can build in something when they're done with the Khan Academy video. Can you help them understand whether they now get it or not, whether they learned from that or not? That's adding a wrinkle to it, and maybe you don't want to do that initially because it's overwhelming. But this is a great start. I really love the format of this. The other thing is, until they look, you know, they may rate their understanding and say, totally get it. And then they look at the answer key and realize, oh, wait, I got this wrong. It may make sense to, just like you're in the columns, you have answer correct, yes or no, before you have to the left of rate your understanding. you might want to make number 2 number 1. The first thing they do is check their answers. And what you're really doing with what your understanding is, if you got it wrong, did you almost get it or you do not get it at all? Right? You're putting 2 flavors of no in there. Yes is I totally get it. Although I guess you could get it right and, you know, say almost got it. But I think what you're doing is rating your understanding basically if you got it wrong. Is that making sense?
I think so. I guess I switched the order of the columns and I didn't change the directions. And so I guess now I'm wondering if I check my answers first, would that change what I would say for rating my understanding? Like I could think I totally get it. And then I'm like, oh, I got it wrong. Or I could get it wrong and say, I thought I totally got it. I guess I have to check I don't get it because I got it wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a nice one. That's the issue is, are they good at assessing whether they understood something while they were doing it? There's a skill in understanding, I don't get this while I'm doing it. You know, after the fact, you see you got a wrong answer. Any fool can say, yeah, I don't get this. But you want to start to have them train themselves to pay attention. And do I understand this while I'm doing it? Because that'll cause them to do some, you know, try a different tack or, you know, do some problem solving skills in some way to remedy the situation.
If you were to move that column, rate your understanding before this checking the answer, I'm wondering, could that become more like I'm confident, how confident am I that I got it right? I'm a little shaky, I'm not sure, maybe I got it right, or I'm not confident about this at all. I mean, with that, I don't know if that helps.
You know, I would say there's an opportunity here to create an entirely different form of feedback where you have them assess how confident they are, then you show them the answer key, then you ask them, were you accurate in your assessment of how well you understood this?
Okay.
So you're focusing on, did you know it while you were doing, did you know whether you got it right while you were doing it? I'd have conversations with students all the time where they'd say, I thought I had this. And then when I got to the test, I blew it. And I say, well, were you able to do all the problems by yourself from beginning to end and get them all correctly? And they said, well, no, I had, you know, I'd check the answer key or the lesson is you have to be able to do it from beginning to end by yourself with no help before you take the test. So that you're confident that you know how to do it without any assistance. And you can assess that separately. I'm not sure that you can put all that together in one.
Yeah. I like that. I really do. I like that. Assessing like your confidence and then answering, because I think that especially in middle school, you think, oh, I totally got this. I totally got this. And it's all, no way. You have no idea.
Even if you did that, and then they did the answer, maybe it's just a conversation then. If there's a mismatch, you got it wrong, but you were so confident. Those are the ones I worry about, right? As a teacher, because you're really confident, but you got it wrong. What's going on here? Those are the kids I really worry about.
Yeah.
That could be a conversation for small group or other things with teachers. So.
Right. You don't know that you don't know it.
Right.
Which means you can't learn it because you think you're done. Right. So maybe you want to rearrange the columns and say, how confident are you that you got this right? Very confident down to not confident at all. Then look at the answer key. Did you get it right? And then, you know, what you do with that then is another question. I mean, whether you have a conversation when you see a kid is consistently not accurate about whether they understand something or not, that's worth a conversation with them. Or maybe when they get into a group, that's what they talk about with each other. What you do with it then is, you know, yeah. Has everybody gone already? Because
no, Sonia needs to go.
Just me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because I'm noticing it's almost 2 o'clock already. So
that's okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, see if you can wrap it up. I'm sorry if I.
Okay. No worries.
All right. Great. Thank you. This is great. Very nice.
Thank you.
All right. See you in a bit. So anybody got any comments or anything from your conversation, or are you all done for the time being? Did you get what you needed out of the group?
I think so, for sure. It was nice to have like see different templates. I know Anne in our group, she shared like a remote learning survey that she'd give to kids at the beginning of the school year. So I thought that was really neat. Probably will feel that.
Yeah. The problem is we're not all getting to see everybody else's work. And there's some really great ideas out there. So we're going to have to figure out some way for everybody to share more.
Don't we have it all in the Google folder?
It is. And you can just go there and look at it. But okay, so I think everybody's back. What I'd like to do now is give you another little break while I reassign you to your grade level that you've told me. So that the next time we do a breakout group, you'll be with people who all teach 6th grade or all teach 7th grade. All right. I think I've successfully organized this. That's great. Is everybody back? See a lot of blank screens here. If you're back, turn on your video. Okay. So I thought maybe we'll take a few minutes here and make sure there are no questions about the unit contract readings that you did. Or is there anything you want to talk about? Let me say before we go any farther, I think it's unlikely that any of you should do unit contracts this first year. There's a huge investment in time in getting them completed. Even if you're working in, I've had groups of people, 5 people who are teaching the same course, who've managed to put unit contracts together the first year that they did this after the workshop. But that's an extreme rarity, and that's with 5 people really wailing at it together. If there are only 1 or 2 of you who are on regular contact, it's going to be a year or 2 at least before you do anything like unit contracts. There are some real advantages to doing them, but one of the things we're going to talk about next week is the pace of change and making sure you don't kill yourself by being idealistic and overshooting. It's a really common mistake to take on too much stuff and then have to fall back and tell your kids, no, we can't do that. And then you get all the push and pull about that. It's better to take bite-sized chunks and push steadily. And unit contracts is not a bite-sized chunk. So anybody have any questions or comments or anything that you saw in that reading that you'd like to talk about or bounce around a little bit?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you do about kids that are absent for several days?
Well, the beauty part of a unit contract is that it's really flexible. And you can, for instance, if a kid is out for 3 days and it's legit, and you're saying, by the end of this unit, everyone should have done 14 items, you can say to that kid, you should have done 12 items.
Yes, no, I see that. But like, they're supposed to do homework so they can work in groups, and, they come back and they've missed 3 days. Do they just work on their own? Well,
that depends. This is a separate topic from unit contracts. You're just asking in general, what do you do when somebody's been missing a lot? I'm not sure that that's changing based on what we're talking about here. You still have to find the optimal way to get that kid up to speed. If they're willing to do work outside of class, then they can catch up that way. I'm not sure that anything that we're talking about in this workshop is going to change that much. A unit contract would, because it allows you to flexibly reassign how much work you expect somebody to realistically do. I've had cases where I had kids doing home and hospital or got pregnant or, different things. And I would just take the contract everybody else had and cross off a bunch of stuff and say, do 6 items by the deadline and send that back home with their person. But you're not going to be in a position to do that. So I'm not sure I'm actually answering your question, Debbie. Um, I don't know that there's an easy way. It depends on the kid and what they're capable, what they're willing to do to catch up more than anything. That's all I got on that. Other comments or anything you want to talk about with unit contracts? You pretty comfortable with the idea of it? But
I had a question about the unit contract on page 134.
all right, let me get my book out. Just happen to have a book here.
So when you give a unit contract, does that mean you're not giving mini contracts?
Right, they're built into this.
Okay.
Built
So okay. So that with at least with a mini contract, depending on how you put it together, you can tell the students, like on Monday we're doing these activities, and if you understand it, you can go to above and beyond. But
right.
if we're foregoing that and we just do this, and I know you do have a calendar that would go with it, which is helpful. But when I'm looking at the classwork/homework, the one in bold, they have to do, on the ones that are optional, but then you have two above and beyond. I don't know if this is a more of a technical question or I'm reading too much into it. Let's say those above and beyond, I really don't expect the students to make that choice until at least they get through the first 3 boxes.
Right.
I'll have some students who might just do the very first one, the homework, and say, I'm good, and they go to the above and beyond. Like with this unit contract is all listed, but then how about the students jump to the above beyond when I don't want them to?
Right. Well, a couple of things. One is this is all revealed to them at first, but they learn over time that there's a sequence of things. And until you've done a lot of the bold items that we're all doing together, it's not a good idea to jump into something that's a lot deeper, because it may be referring to something we haven't even done together yet.
Right.
And so they learn to pace themselves and not to jump. And the other thing is, when there's open work time, I'll say to them, here's what you can be working on today, this, and this above and beyond, and that above and beyond. Okay. So it helps direct them verbally, or I'll put it on the board and say, here are the things that are available right now. You know, one of the things about a unit contract is all of the mini contracts that you do along the way are folded into it. Those options are just here now instead of being on, So did I answer your question, or?
No, you did. So when you created this one, it was, can I almost say it was in chronological order? Or no, it can't be, because you have current events on the bottom.
Right. The bold items are in chronological order.
Okay.
So it builds, this is an example. It's the energy contract. I could throw this up on the screen so you can all see it. Let me do that real quickly. Well, let's see. No, I'm not doing this well. Sorry. In any case, what I found was I wanted to break complex skills that I wanted them to master into the sub skills and build those chunk by chunk towards a complex task. And with each sub skill, there'll be some feedback that says, you know how to do this now, or you don't, and here's some more practice on just that sub skill, so that they could gradually build the tools that they need to do the complex skill. The unit contract lays those out in the sequence. So if there's a step, energy problem 2, energy conservation, there'd be another one underneath that was practice for that. So each step along the way, there's more practice, more remediation available for the sub skills that they're building up. Yeah. Anything else that popped into your heads while you're reading the unit contracts? I do want to show you one. Oh, you know what? Here's an example. So let me share my screen with you. There we go. So this is oh, you know what? I did the wrong one. Hang on just a second. That one's the one I want. This is what we were just talking about, coincidentally. And you can see there's some bold ones and not bold ones and so forth. This is what you end up with. And it's got check boxes for whether they did it, self-evaluation. They self-evaluate the whole thing at the bottom. I agree. It's based on 14 items. How many did you do? And so forth. This is the highly evolved structure. You're not going to do this. Instead, what you can do, and even this is more complicated than you need. This was an algebra, a high school algebra teacher who created this. This is a proto-contract where he left everything blank, and he would have the kids fill in these items. He would put it up on the board and fill in one item at a time. So he's not trying to do it ahead of time. He's doing it on the fly as he's going. And they would check whether they had it stamped and whether they completed it. And they evaluate themselves for learning process and whether they understood it, thumbs up, thumb sideways, thumb down. This is way more complicated. The first year that you do this, you could have 1 in a line, 2 in a line, 3 in a line. Maybe you have a checkbox in front so they can cross off the things that they're doing. It's just a listing of everything that they could have done, and they put check boxes next to the things that they did do. And that can go on, as a header for that unit's worth of work. If you do this year coming up, if you just create a simple structure for this, it can be literally name, period, a checkbox, and a blank line, a checkbox and a blank line. It really could be that simple. Then as you're going through the year, you have them keep track of everything they're doing, and you keep track of everything you're offering them. And by the time you get to next year, first of all, you got a really complete list of all the work that went into this unit, could have gone into this unit. And secondly, you've got the building blocks for a unit contract, which you could, if you're working with other people, do the next year, the second year after this summer. What he did was he'd fill it in, and by the end of the unit, everything that they could have done was there, and they would have checked off some of them and others not. And you can do this as well. You can just be keeping a running list of everything that could have been done by students in the course of a given unit. Okay.
Larry,
yeah.
Can you go back to yours?
Uh-huh.
The one you have up there? Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my other question. The dash, what number are the students supposed to fill in there?
Okay, these homework items are on a 1 to 5 scale, and those are defined by that form that you've seen already that says it's stamped and on time. It has a title and a date. You did all the work. You corrected all the things that needed correcting. It was all that kind of stuff. They self-evaluate each piece of work that they do, the process of each piece of work that they do, and they put that down here. When we're all done, we have a record of what work they did and how well they did it. Not, do you understand it yet? That's a separate assessment. But this is saying, here's the kind of work that I'm doing on this unit. I did a complete set. I did more than I was required to do. I did all the required items. I did backup problems when I needed them. There's a really nice record of all the work they've done. And later on, when we talk about the possibility of grade conferences, this is what you look at when you have a conference with a kid. This and their test scores. And you now have a really complete record of how they're doing the work and how well they're understanding it. That does the job? Okay. All right. Actually, I did want to show you, let me go back to that. I wanted to show you next week's contract. That's this. So this is what we're going to be doing for next week. This is your last contract. And we're going to be talking about grades and implementing ideals in the real world. How do you realistically put this stuff into place? You've got new curriculum, you've got colleagues and administrators who may or may not know what you're talking about. How do you do this? How do you stay in touch with each other? How do you support each other? That's what we'll be talking about next week. But you'll notice I've got you reading one section of the unit contracts, which is optional for today. 7.3 I want to call required because it describes proto contracts and it'll give you a better idea of whether you want to try to do that this year coming up. For next week, you're going to be designing a learning sequence of your own, of any duration that you want. It could be a week or a whole unit, even a few days for that matter. And optionally, create a proto contract. Some of you are going to want to use it, some of you aren't. That's an optional item. And I've got a form that I'm going to give you about planning the summer and beyond. What is it you want to try? How much help will you need from me, and so forth. Okay. And one last thing, and then I'll get you back into groups. I think it was last week, I talked to you about or maybe the week before. There are, I think, 4 things that everybody ought to at least consider doing this year coming up. One is reframing the student work and having them be metacognitive. Do I understand this while they're doing it? Another is getting conversational group work going on, a lot of conversational learning. You've already done both of these written work, 3A and 3B. Learning contracts, you've already created something for that. The self-evaluation is what you worked on for today. But I want to add 2 things, tentatively. The first is learning sequences. You're going to do one for homework for next week. This is not something that you create a form for, or it's not even something you share with students. It's a different way of thinking about how you plan what you're doing. You start the planning process from what they're experiencing, not what you're going to do. It's a subtle shift, but it's really important. And I'd like you to at least try formally writing down on paper what a learning sequence might look like. And you'll have time in just a minute to talk to each other about that and try to start the homework. So that one, I think, is an important shift in the way you think about your job, the way you think about planning what you do. Less about learning, lesson plans, and more about learning sequences. And then finally, proto contracts. I don't know whether I recommend it or not. I remember for myself how hard it was to keep track of what I did every day. I tried to write in a book what I did every day in all my classes. And there'd be stretches of a week or two where I'd just be so stretched thin that I'd not do it. So a proto contract requires paying attention on a regular basis and writing stuff down. You may or may not be able to do that this year. There may be too many other things to think about. If you're pooling your resources with other people who are teaching the same class you are, this becomes much easier to do. You can create a shared document. Everybody can dump stuff in it. And by the time you get to the end of the year, you've got some stuff, you have a real nice collection, a palette of things to choose from when you start thinking about contracts next year. So I wanted to lay that out for you, that the first 4 things I think are really important and are worth the time that it takes to launch this first year. You may decide to only do 2 or 3 of them. I think all of them are an investment that pays off huge dividends, and all of them free you up. Ultimately, it takes more overhead at the beginning to get set up and get it rolling. You have to train them how to do these things. But once you do, they're much more self-sufficient and less reliant on you. And that frees your time up to do what you want to do. So let me get out of this. And any questions, anything anybody wants to talk about? We're good? Yeah? All right. So What I'd like to do now is get you into new groups based on the grade level you're teaching. And I'm going to send you a discussion prompts, which are very simple, basically, and the homework assignment for next week, homework 6A. And what I'd like you to do is read through the homework for next week and then start brainstorming how are you going to do it, and give each other ideas about how to get that done. And I think we could take another half hour to do this, aim to be done at 3 o'clock. Maybe a few minutes break, so maybe we'll reassemble at say 10 after 3. Gives you a lot of time to talk. Yeah? All right, so let me put you, let's see if I can do this. Breakout rooms. Yes, this should work. If it doesn't, get back to me and we'll see if I can move people around. Good luck. And I'll send you stuff right now. My computer. Homework 6A. And
Let me,
I don't
this
think
is
he put.
Ruth.
hello.
Discussion 5.2. Oh yeah, I have it up. Should I share it?
Yep.
Sure.
Did you not all get it?
I don't.
I don't know. I have it from the folder. It doesn't matter. I'm okay sharing it.
Okay. Did you get the assignment 6A, the homework you're supposed to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did everybody get that?
I did not, Larry.
Okay.
It was in the chat.
Did you look in the chat box there?
I did not, I'm going to be honest. So maybe if one of you ladies can share it with me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
I'll send it out again. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let me do that. To Edina. And this was homework 6A.
Okay.
Is that what we're working on?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, the discussion question is that, right, Larry? That's what we're discussing, right?
The discussion 5.2, those are just prompts. Read through that and then just start talking is what I'm thinking. But what you're trying to do is get ready to do the designing the learning sequence assignment for next week. Does everybody have homework 6A? I sent that to everybody, right?
Yeah.
I have it up on the screen. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, I can see. We can see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you make it bigger?
Sure. I will try.
There you
If
go.
you didn't get this, I can, oh, okay, that's fine.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so everybody's in the right place. This is 6th grade, right? We're all
Yes.
good? All right, I am going to go check in 7th grade and see how they're doing. So I'll be back in a bit.
Okay. And I thought the learning sequence was more for us teachers, how we're planning it.
Well, I think it is. Because like if you look at those pages, it says like, here I'm doing this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're kind of doing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is everybody clear about what you're doing right now for the next half hour? The homework 6A, talking through how to launch doing that homework for next week.
Is this something that we should like share a Google Doc and all work on together, or should we each be doing this individually?
That's a good question. I mean, what you could do is collaborate. If you're teaching the same course as other people, you could each take adjacent chunks of content and share that with each other. You could also work out right now how you're going to work with each other and come up with some format for this so that you can all be working in the same format and you know, having, you know, you do one section, somebody else does the next, somebody else does the next. And now you've got a big chunk of sequence worked out. But any way you want to spend this time is fine, of course. You could do a shared document. You could talk to each other about how you can work on your own thing and get ready for it for next week. How are you going to do it?
Larry, is it okay? Because I know I'm for sure teaching like an elementary reading classes. I know this is like a math PD, but like, is it okay to like kind of plan that out? Because I don't know if I'm exactly teaching math yet.
Oh,
so, like,
yeah.
Make it personal. Okay.
Whatever you want to do. The main thing is that you practice the skill of thinking through the mind of the student. Okay, we're doing this, and then I'm doing this by myself, and then how will I know whether I've got it or not? Oh, there's going to be a checkup, and that'll allow me to make a choice about what to do in a mini contract and so forth. Okay. So, yeah, you do it on about anything you want to. There are a bunch of math teachers here, as it happens, and you know, you guys can start talking to each other about how to plan this in a bigger sense. How are we going to work with each other in the future?
Wait, so we're doing learning sequence.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem to be. Oh, okay. Never mind. I see where okay.
Got it? Yeah? Okay.
Larry, for the learning sequence, I know some page starts on 239 to 240. Did you, so what is page 241? That's actually more of a detailed day by day listing of the activity.
Well, you know, I had different, these are examples of people who took an assignment like this and ran with it in their own way. They invented their own format.
But I like 241 a lot.
Yeah. You look at these. I did the kind of the boxes that precede that. Those are mine. And I've taken, you know, examples from teachers that I'm working with and worked out a sequence like that. But other people have come up with all kinds of ways to describe what the sequence is of, are you doing it by yourself? Are you doing it with others? Is there a checkup at this point? When do I need to differentiate and so forth? And people have come, as you can see, there are all different kinds of ways to do that. Pick something that feels comfortable to you and run with it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to leave you guys alone so you can talk more freely, and I'll check in the 8th graders. See you in a bit.
Like a lot of, I guess it wouldn't be that much work every day, really. Be 15, 20, 30 minutes, but I feel like a weekly contract would be too much writing. Or nah, I guess if you structured it like Monday, Tuesday, I don't know. I got to think about that, but.
Ryan, are you doing this by yourself, or are you going to be sharing this with other people?
What's that?
Well, as you're planning some of these things out, you were talking about the lesson the learning sequence.
Yeah. We actually got in kind of a sidebar, but I guess I needed some more clarity on the learning sequence. The learning sequence kind of, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. Kind of seems like a scope and sequence type thing to me, which Desmos already does for us, kind of. I'm
not as familiar with Desmos to know that, but
they lay out like all of this stuff. They don't use the exact same terminology, obviously, but I don't know. My first thought was just wondering if that's something, if it's a necessary piece of work.
It may not be. I think more than anything, this is a shift in thinking.
Yeah.
So that you start planning, and the idea of running a virtual, test drive, assuming the mind of a student is really struggling and walking through day by day, and is there any point at which they need help, they need remediation, they need more practice, and it's not available to them? So that means I have to plan it differently. Or is there any point where a kid who gets it right away is going to be sitting there thinking, when are we going to do, you know, I'm bored. Now what am I going to do? And based on that, you plan.
Okay.
If you can imagine being in the mind of one of your students, and you've introduced something, they practiced a while, and now you have them work by themselves, and you can tell there's this wide range. Some of them get it, they're ready to go. Some of them are really struggling. You need some differentiation at that point. So then you plan a mini contract for that. And you plan a checkup before that mini contract so that they know and you know who needs to do practice and who gets to do enrichment. And how long will that be for? Is that a 20-minute period, or is it 2 days? And then when they come back together, how do you sew that back together? So you check up, does everybody get it now? Or are there some people who are still struggling and we're going to have to work on the side because we got to move on as a group, right? It's that kind of thinking. So if you put yourself in the mind of the student, you're not thinking so much about, first I'm going to introduce this, and then they'll do that, and then I'll introduce that, and then they'll do that. That's about me teaching. You want to be on the receiving end and plan accordingly. When do I need differentiation is their problem, not your. I mean, it's based on them, not you. You know, when do they need a checkup so that they get some feedback? Is you know, you know that a kid can do a problem set and say, yeah, I got it. But unless you give them feedback, do this problem. Oh, you got it wrong? Aha, then that means you need to practice some more. Unless you do that, and that's built into the sequence, so they work by themselves. Is there a checkup? There needs to be. So that then you know, everybody got it right, no differentiation. You got a range, ooh, now we got to differentiate.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thinking. And I don't know whether Desmos helps you think that way or helps students think that way or not. It probably says, you need to practice some more, go back and do these. I'm guessing. I haven't actually worked with the program. But there's more to it in terms of managing the flow of activities, of which Desmos is just a part, right? I mean, it's not all they're doing.
Yep.
So you can fit Desmos into one of, you know, you have introduction, exploration, metacognition, conversation, open work time. There are all these blocks of activities. Desmos may be exploration and metacognition, but then they get together to have a conversation about something, you know, and they get ready to answer a checkup that finds out whether everybody in the group now understands what they need to. Is that helping clarify this?
No, it does. Yeah.
And all I want for next week is you put some time into thinking in that, from that framework, from that point of view. It's just a shift in perspective. So, you know, instead of seeing the sequence from the front of the room, you're seeing the sequence from one of the seats in one of the desks.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
All right.
It does. Thank you.
All right, good. Anything else anybody wants to talk about with me while I'm here? Are you guys teaching the same thing next year? You know?
All 8th grade. I know Ryan.
I'm all 8th grade this year.
You're all
All 8th this year, yeah.
So you guys are all going to have the same classes, the same subjects.
Yeah, it's all algebra.
To my knowledge, yeah.
And it's detracked, right? There's no accelerated thing anymore.
Right.
So basically, you could be sharing everything, right?
Yeah.
All the stuff that you come up with. So one of the things I want you to start doing today, and we'll definitely do more next week, is how are you going to do that? You're going to have shared documents? Are you going to FaceTime each other once a week? How are you going to communicate so you can start sharing resources, giving each other support? You know, it's going to be a bumpy ride. you're changing a lot of stuff this year. This stuff, Desmos, no accelerated class, you know, there's a lot going on. And the more support you can give each other, the easier a ride it's going to be, right? So start thinking about how you're going to do that. I mean, I would recommend something regular, once a week, some kind of check-in with each other or something. So start working on that, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. All right. I'm going to leave you at the moment. See you in a bit.
All right.
Either I'm getting confused going from day to day to putting all that into a week. And so for me, yes, 241 kind of helps, but my brain is stuck in between those. So I don't know if anybody else is feeling that.
It's like a combination between 240 and 241.
Yeah.
Let's see. So.
So I just jumped in. Can you guys explain what the problem is that you're talking through? The difference between 240 and 241? What's the issue? What's getting in the way?
I don't think anything's getting. I think we're just trying to go about, like, you know, we first looked at the whole unit. We're like, oh, a little overwhelmed. So then we looked at, you know, your 4-day section of the unit. So I think we broke it down just to make it a little smaller to start off,
right,
and look at a section of a unit. So we decided what we want to cover. We're going to talk about ratios, and now we're just centered thinking about how we'd like to organize it best using the examples you gave us. So it almost seems like we want to do a combination between, you know, when you have the rectangles, intro, individual work, metacognition, use those sort of guide our thinking. And then for the more detailed part would be what you have on 241, which gives the examples, like this is what they're actually going to do.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, you know, you'll see that after the little boxes, which are things that I made either for myself or for other teachers, all these other ones are things that people that I've worked with in the past have come up with on their own. So this is, I mean, it just gives you a sense of how varied this tool can look. It can really have different stuff in it and look completely different and so forth. The main thing is that you're shifting your gaze from being in the front of the room looking at a bunch of students to being on the receiving end, sitting at a student's desk and thinking about what does it feel like now? And do I need more practice? And is there any opportunity for me to continue practicing? Or do I need more feedback at this time so I know whether I get it or not? You know, you're trying to feel what a student's experience is like in terms of learning. When do they feel lost? When do they feel bored? When do they feel like, when does the room separate out so you have to do some differentiation? It's this kind of thinking that'll tell you when to differentiate, when you need a mini contract or some other way to differentiate. So is that kind of making sense, or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you want to share with me while I'm here, or do you want to just keep talking?
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
All right. Well, we're going to reconvene at 3:10, so I'll get everybody back by then. Okay?
Okay.
All right. See ya.
That would be a neat way to like introduce the curriculum to the parents too, like so that they can kind of like see a scope of whatever you're doing, the day, the week, the unit, like, because I could see parents being like, what is, like, this is an online program, like how does the lesson work? So like you're kind of creating a good visual for them too.
Mm-hmm. It really helped last year when I sent that, especially with remote learning on Mondays, and I was just like, this is what is expected.
Yeah, sure.
You got that email.
Make sure you log it. Yeah.
Share with me.
guess for Desmos, before I can even start planning it, like the first day of whatever lesson you have, is it, I mean, I know we just got the curriculum, like are we doing an intro, then you do the Desmos, and then you pull questions of students so you can have that discussion, and then what do you do after the Desmos? I mean, do you see it playing out that way on a daily basis?
Is this called 7th grade self-directed learning shared materials?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just couldn't go back and forth. I'm like,
So Valentina, I feel like I don't have an answer to that. I feel like that's sort of, when I was saying that I need to be able, like this will give me time to go through the first unit and think through each of those. Like, I feel like depending on the lesson, there's gonna be time where they're given to work on other things too. But you kind of have to decide what that's gonna look like in your classroom.
Yeah, I think too, like even, I think the lessons are planned for like 40 or 45 minutes. So I think there's going to be a lot of like supplemental things that we're like providing to give more practice or like further the exploration, I think.
It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, the learning sequence will basically be based on how well the students did on that Desmos activity. That if they do well, then you're going to have them do above and beyond. But if they're still confused, that's when you might pull students in small groups, do supplemental work. It almost seems like to do a learning sequence for the whole investigation or the whole unit, it's hard because of the way Desmos is set up. It's almost as if to me it's like on a daily basis that if they go through this, if they understand it, then they can do above and beyond or other work. If not, then maybe that's when I need to start pulling kids. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Because open work is based on how well they did on Desmos. Individual work, I feel like almost the same.
Let me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but how well do you guys know what Desmos is going to be like in the classroom? Do you have any, I mean, how is it?
Larry, they're writing the curriculum as we're doing this. Like they just dropped 3 new units.
I shouldn't be laughing. That's kind of funny in a sad way. Yeah, so clearly you're mashing a bunch of new things together, and clearly it's going to have to evolve probably rapidly at the start of the year as you figure out, and you don't know if you're going to be doing it remotely or not.
Yeah.
I mean, which changes everything. So I think the way to approach it, I think, is to assume what little you know about Desmos and how you're going to use it in your classroom, and plug that into a sequence of events that you can anticipate that are going to be what you would normally do. So you're going to introduce a new topic. You're going to want them to talk to each other about it. You're going to want them to maybe do individual work to see if they can do a problem. You're going to give them a checkup to see, okay, how many people can do that now? All of that may precede them jumping onto Desmos, or maybe Desmos serves as the exploratory portion. And when they're all done with Desmos, you do a checkup to see, well, do we need to differentiate now, or can we all move on together? You see what I'm saying? So Desmos is somehow going to be woven into the sequence of events that we've got here. And to me, what's confusing is, I don't know whether it includes exploration and checkups. I assume there are checkups built into it that tell kids whether they've got something or not, and they go back and practice if they don't, right? I mean, isn't that built in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to have checkups that are internal to Desmos, and you're almost certainly going to have checkups, feedback to them and to you outside of Desmos to see, well, okay, they did all Desmos. Do they know how to do it now? You know, so you're going to have throw a question on the screen and have them write something and find out how many of them got it right. And based on that, you decide, okay, we can move on now, and you introduce some new topic. But I don't right now see how Desmos is incorporating some of the stuff we're talking about here with a learning sequence. It's built into it, but how much, and how do you blend that with the stuff in the real world, in your world, in your classroom?
So it seems like, Larry, with the learning sequence is that Desmos on a daily base kind of has the structure of it already built in. That's what my concern was. It's like, I don't have that much autonomy. Yes, I do, as far as if I need to give supplemental work, maybe create more above and beyond, or maybe pull students, but majority of the learning sequence is already built within Desmos. But obviously it's not the whole class period. I still have to do things. So it almost seems like, to me, for me, my learning sequence might be on a daily base, because that's what they do. And then we go off from that. Obviously we're going to introduce the material unless they do the lesson. And then we're going to have almost have choices that if you understand it, you're going to go do this activity.
Right.
Exploration, the checkup, all that's built in.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, about Desmos.
Do you guys think that Desmos is going to be a big part of what they do every day?
It's every day they do. Yeah.
Wow. And do you have a sense of what % of your time with the kids they're going to be doing Desmos?
30 to 40 minutes. Others for long-winded, maybe 45.
30. Wait. So what % of your time with them will that be? That
probably like 60%.
Yeah.
60? 60?
Probably. Yeah.
Wow. That's replacing a lot of your job, seems to me.
Well, no, because our job is to stop at certain points and to compare answers and say, how are these alike? How are they different? What did this person do? So,
yeah, but it's going to be a new experience, right? I mean, it's a really different way of teaching from the original. So, wow, you guys have a lot to absorb very quickly at the start of the year, sounds like. Well, I think the clearer you are, I mean, as you start to mess around with Desmos yourself, you'll start to see which aspects of the learning sequence are incorporated into it, and which ones you have to supplement on the outside, and how you have them do whatever they're doing with Desmos, and when they pop out of that, you're ready with whatever the next learning sequence chunk should be, whether it's exploration of a new topic or a checkup and then differentiation based on have they mastered it yet, or so it's going to be challenging to weave in and out of Desmos and have it just be a big chunk of the learning sequence. I guess we're going to have to wait and see how it goes. I will be available if people want to share some of this stuff as you're getting into it and you want to get some assistance in figuring out how to weave in and out of Desmos and still do these other things that we're talking about with, mini contracts or whatever. It's going to be a learning curve for sure. I guess the other thing I wanted to say is you guys should also be talking to each other about how you're going to work with each other. Those of you who are teaching the same thing for the rest of the summer, getting ready and or when school starts.
Just created a shared folder.
Good. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. But also, do you talk to each other on a regular basis? Do you have a little Zoom session once a week or something to check in and set up some kind of structure so that you're sharing with each other as regularly as possible, because it really will streamline the new stuff that you're trying.
Also, I was gonna say, we have a new staff. We hired a new special ed teacher. She's gonna be teaching one of the middle school grades. So I always feel like those kind of people get lost, because they're not included in these summer PDs, or maybe they're not even in the new teacher orientation. So let's remember to reach out to them too.
Yeah, we're going to be hiring a couple new special ed teachers as well. We haven't yet, so.
Oh,
great. Oh, you know what? It's almost 10 after. So I'm going to leave you guys and I'll end this. I think we can. Are you guys done talking, do you think? I mean, in pretty good shape or do you need more time?
You know what? I was going to share something I had with everyone that I started working on to see if they liked it.
Okay. Well, why don't you do that and I'll make it maybe I'll turn things off at, I think we have enough time, maybe quarter after. Would that be all right? Yeah? Okay. All right. I'll see ya. I don't have time. Hello. Okay. All right. I got a couple more things I'd like to do very briefly, and then I'll give you more time to do some brainstorming, and I'll lay out what the options are for open work time at the end of this session. First thing I want to do is tell you an assignment you're going to get. I'll mail this to you in a little bit. Are you seeing this agency in your, no, that's not what I meant. Planning for the summer and beyond. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something I want to send to you, you know, in a few days. Don't fill it out until you finish doing the reading for next week. So you may end up doing this Sunday night. I don't know. But basically what I want you to do is for all the various different structures that we could possibly do, you could possibly do next year, I'd like you to assess how likely is it that you're going to actually do it and how ready are you to do it, so that we can start having conversations about what you need from me for the rest of the summer, if anything, and what you might need from me in the fall for support. You know, so I'll send that to you in, you know, in a few days. And then, whoops, screen sharing is shop. Yeah, window. Okay, let me share one more thing with you that I'd like you to maybe get together and talk about for a bit. And that is to get a, there we go, to take a look at how you, at different times in the course of a sequence in a unit, how often do you do things like introduce new material, allow kids to explore that material, work on their own to see if they can understand what's going on, get together and talk in groups, conversational learning, spread out and do differentiation and so forth. And not only how often does that happen, you know, maybe on a 1 to 5 scale where 5 is all the time and 1 is never, but then who's in charge when that's happening? Are individual students in charge? Are student groups doing work on their own? Is it something you're directing them to do? Because I think the shift to self-directed learning means taking an honest appraisal of how often you're telling them what to do and how often they're choosing what to do. And so this is an attempt to get you to think in those terms. In the course of a normal unit, how often are they actually in charge of anything? How often do you think they will be once you start implementing some of these things? So now that I'm looking at it, I'm not sure. I was going to give you guys like 15, 20 minutes to talk about this. Does this seem useful to you as a way to spend your time, or would you rather do some other stuff? Anybody got anything here? Any opinions? I mean, what I wanted to do is let you just go through these and think about it a little bit and then talk to each other about where you spend your time, where your kids spend their time, and is that ideal, and how much of it is self-directed and how much of it is teacher-directed. I don't know. Let's do a thumbs up if you want to do it and a thumbs down if you don't, and be honest. Thumbs down. I see a thumbs down. Come on, everybody. Thumbs up, thumbs down. There's one up, sideways, couple sideways, a lot of sideways.
Can we do can you send that document out if we would just like to look at it by ourselves and do some?
I will definitely do that. And you know what? What I was thinking is I will put you back into these same groups based on your grade level. And why don't we call the rest of today open work time? And I'll give you some things to do, including this document. So if you want to take 10, 15 minutes in your group to go through this and stop and think about it and maybe percolate some ideas, that's great. And if you don't, or maybe a subset of you want to do that. Let me share something else with you. All right, so things you can work on right now. The first and maybe most important thing is figuring out how you're going to collaborate with each other. I cannot tell you how important it is that you support each other as this throughout the rest of the summer, but especially once the school year starts, especially if it's remote learning. I just think if there's some way you can formalize how you stay in touch with each other, whether it's on a weekly basis, however you want to do it, but start thinking about how you want to share the resources, how you want to support each other. It's going to be daunting at times with all the new stuff you're doing to try to introduce mini contracts or to try to introduce these self-evaluations. And if you're supporting each other, it'll be much easier. So start with that. How are we going to talk to each other? How are we going to support each other the rest of the summer, and especially on into on into the rest of the year? You can work on the mini contracts. You can work on the self-evaluation rubrics. A number of you did, for 5A, did a self-evaluation of comprehension while they're doing the thing. You might want to then see if you can do another self-evaluation of the process. If you haven't done that yet, that would be a good use of your time. Maybe work with each other to figure that out. You can work on 6A for next week. designing a learning sequence. Some of you may want to do a proto contract, and you can start thinking about that. Is it just a checkbox in a line and then a whole bunch of those? Is it, do you want to have more involved? Do you want to figure out a way to collaborate on filling that in so that at the end of a unit, you have a complete record of the unit and everything that went into it? So I'd like to give you time to just talk to each other. And I recommend using this time to share things. If you want to break out and work independently, you know, that's your call. But this is an opportunity to start weaving some connections. I don't even know if you all know each other all that well, all the 6th grade teachers, all the 7th grade teachers. You know, this is an opportunity to start figuring out how to connect with people in a different school that you might otherwise not have anything to do with. It might be worth it to keep, if 6th grade teachers at Chute and Nichols are working with each other, everybody's richer, everybody's better off, right? So these are the things to work on. I'll send you, and in addition to this, the agency in your classroom. How much agency do kids have now? And where do you want them to be when you've started doing some of this stuff? All right. So I'm going to get you back into groups, and let me stop sharing, and I'll get you into group. Anything you want to talk to me about before we break up? Are we all good? Yeah. Okay. Let's get back into groups, and I'll send out that last form, and I'll check in with you guys over the next half hour or so, see how you're doing.
Classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
How are you guys doing with whatever you're working on?
So I think we have a good start with the learning process, Larry. We looked at the main ideas of like introduction, exploration, conversation, and we thought about like how does that match in Des book? Yeah. We're not sure if this is what you're looking for, but I can show you what we did together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So this was for 6A. We identified the activities from Des book under each category. For example, like for the exploration, it's the kids going through the activity slides. And so it'd be like student directed in terms of they would work individually, share out with small group. And then the conversation piece would be the lesson synthesis of the lesson, where it's like individual for students and then small group, and then they would share out to whole class. And so we kind of broke down each thing and thought about like how does that directly tie into the Des book curriculum.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And in terms of a sequence of things, do you think you have a sense of how you're going to go into Desmos and then back out to classroom activities that aren't?
Yeah. So like, I think so. Cause like the intro is like from Des book, which is like the warm up, or like they call it math talks or warm ups. Right. And then the kids would do the exploration activity slides, and then we would synthesize as a class together big takeaways. But then the open work time is when we would introduce the mini contracts so that they can work independently, or they can work on the are you ready for more tasks, right? from
Right.
Des book. So it's like more individual driven, student driven.
Wow. Okay.
So I think Des book has a really good layout for it already.
Uh-huh.
And we just had to identify what it looks like in that curriculum. The only difference from CMP is like the intro for CMP would be the launch, right? And then explore would be explore, and then summary would be the lesson synthesis. But I think there's like some nice overlap there.
Yeah, yeah. In a way, you guys might be ahead of the game using Desmos because you're thinking in these terms.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like when you talk about metacognition, this whole time, it's like Des book has like the cool downs for every lesson, and it also has a student survey like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do they feel about the lesson, and do they feel like they learn? So it's like already embedded in the
Yeah.
Des.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. Do you guys normally stay in touch with each other? You're at different schools, right? I don't even know.
Yeah, I see Jen a lot because like we were both department chairs. This is my first time meeting Ryan through this meeting in terms of like the summer curriculum project. But I'm pretty confident we can email back and forth and share via Google Drive, and if our district allows us to meet.
Yeah, and if not, you could Zoom or do some other way to share stuff. But yeah, if you have a common drive and you're throwing things in together, it'll really help. So.
Yeah. Larry, I had one question that I wanted to ask you, and we were kind of talking about this too in mini contracts. So I really want, like, I'm all in. I'm like, I was telling them, I'm like, I'm just jumping the deep end of the pool and then figure stuff out kind of guy.
Okay. Good luck.
Yeah, right. I know. But I keep going back and forth in my head with a daily mini contract or a weekly mini contract. And
well,
your thoughts. I'll stop.
Yeah. I guess I would step back and ask two questions. One is, what is feasible for you in terms of staying ahead of it? Planning out a whole week ahead of time, all the activities that are going to happen during that week. I'm not sure. You can use mini contracts just for differentiation and no other purpose. So when they're not all doing the same thing at the same time, they have a mini contract.
I think that's sorry to interrupt, but I think that's like the way we were thinking about it, because, or at least I was thinking about it, is because Desmos lessons are kind of whole group-ish for 15, 20 minutes, and then you come back, or 30 minutes maybe, and we have 80-minute blocks, right? So let's say it takes 40, 45 minutes after discussions, and if you take a brain break or whatever it is like that. And then so you've got an extra 30 minutes each class, and that's where I was planning on using the mini contracts.
Right, right.
So now that I said that out loud, I feel like a week's worth is a lot.
It is, yeah. And especially the first time through, where it's hard to anticipate, especially because you have a new curriculum, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't know how challenging it's going to be in terms of the range. And you have the accelerated group isn't there. And I mean, it's all one group now.
Yep.
So the bell curve is bigger than it used to be,
mm-hmm.
Right? It's a bigger spread. And that means you're going to need more differentiation than you would have used last year, where accelerated was in a separate room. But you're doing a new curriculum, and you don't know how often you're going to have to spread out. It may be every day you got to spread out.
Yeah.
But it may be twice a week. And the rest of the time you can have study groups. Don't forget, when things start to spread out, you can do a mini contract and have them do different things. But you can also have them pile in and have the kids who get it teach the kids who don't get it.
Yeah, and the study groups, yeah.
So differentiation is one strategy when you've got the spread, and conversational learning is the other side of it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. That answers it's got to be daily then. I feel most comfortable starting daily.
Or maybe every couple days.
2-3 times a week, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think you're going to have to get your feet wet with Desmos and really see how kids take it and how they respond to it and how some kids learn from it and some kids don't learn from it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with the kids who don't, and how are these kids not going to be bored, and blah, blah, blah. So
especially virtually, because it sounds like we're starting out remote. So.
I mean, 202 already said they're going remote, so I don't know if it's even remotely possible that you guys aren't.
Yeah.
When the high school is. And I got to tell you, I think any school that's marching ahead with in class, 3 weeks later, it's not going to stand. I mean, I don't think it's possible. And I think a lot of teachers, don't want it to be possible. So, but in any case, it's another new thing on top of all the other good things. I mean, you're wailing away at 5 fronts at the same time. And unfortunately, you're working with me at the same time, doing a 6th thing on top of all that. So,
no, it's not torturous, Larry. Don't worry about it. No, it's been great.
Glad to hear it.
It's been great.
And again, I probably won't be coming into your classrooms, even if you have classrooms, because I'm being super careful. I'm 72 years old. I'm not taking any chances.
Yeah.
But I will be available, and what I don't know is how often we're going to be working with each other. You're going to want to work with me once the school year starts. I have in the past met with people once a week on a regular basis, and if they didn't need it, they'd say not today. So there was a default that I'd talk to everybody at least once a week. And then this last year, I was at a new high school, Rolling Meadows High School, and they just, they barely needed to talk to me at all. For some reason, they didn't want to meet.
Yeah.
They were just happy jumping in and seeing what happened. So it's going to be up to you guys whether you want me to be there and help you figure things out. I will absolutely be available as much as you want, because I think this is really important. And I know how hard it is, and especially how hard it's going to be this year. I mean, I don't envy you guys what you're up against this year. It's tough. So, you may feel overwhelmed and you don't have time to talk to me. And I understand that, but it may also be that I can help organize things that are, you're struggling with. So.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that. Yeah.
I'm glad you're enthusiastic. I mean, it's great to know. And I'm hoping that everyone will get at least something out of this that will, start the process of handing stuff over to the kids. It seems like Desmos is already doing that to some extent, that
it is better than other curriculum.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's still more. You can always make them do all the lifting, ideally.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. By the way, nobody's checking. If you guys are done, you could go home. You're already home, of course, but.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Larry.
I'll see you next week.
Alrighty.
See you next week.
Bye.